So, folks, I'm with my good friend Kristy Kaufmann, who has started a fantastic firm called Coda Support, and I've known Kristy since, wow, you were a freshman at Cal.
And a long time ago.
A long time. Well,
Stop dating me.
It seems like it was yesterday, and then, of course, you were on the national Cal gymnastics team, and
right.
Interviewed you when I was with the Montclarian, and so we have all of these different circles of life, but this now is this is fantastic. I think what you're doing is of great service to the country, and so I say, as a friend, before we get started, congratulations, really proud of you, and go Bears. And with that, tell my viewers how you started Coda Support.
Thanks, Denny, and go Bears back. I became an Army wife just a couple months before after September 11th. So I met and married my husband. The only way a girl that could go to Berkeley could meet a guy that went to West Point in Vegas, because that's the only place that could possibly happen. So apparently what happens in Vegas doesn't always stay there, because I ended up in the Army. So did not come from that life at all. You knew me. Aside from Berkeley, I grew up in Rochelle, New York, which is kind of not where you find a lot of military folks traditionally. And so, after I married my husband, that took me to Lawton, Oklahoma, which was a culture shock for everybody, including Oklahoma. So
you must have had a great time in Vegas. That's good.
Yeah, it was a lot of transition for me, and so then I ended up in Oklahoma, and 2 months later the war started. Well, September 11th happened, and then the operational tempo became what it has been for the past 13 years. And so basically, I came to this just like a wife. Basically, I came into a culture that I really didn't know anything about, like most of us don't. I mean, one of the things that we say here is less than 1% of the population serves in uniform, so that it's another 99% that is relatively disconnected, because we have this all-volunteer military, which is good in some respects, very professional military, but also difficult because you have a kind of a population that is separated from the country that it's truly serving. So anyway, so this experience that I had as a military wife really shaped my understanding of what it's like to be a military family, particularly during a time of war. He's now my former husband, unfortunately, we got divorced a couple of years ago, which is, not necessarily unusual. He just got back from his 6th deployment, and that's not unusual either.
That struck me. I mean,
that's the other thing that you're seeing, is that you just have, basically, we decided as a country to outsource our national defense to less than 1% of the population. Whether or not you voted for whoever it is making the decisions, just remember, I encourage all of your followers and viewers to remember that we don't make national policy, right? We are told what to do. We, the military community, are told what we're going to do, and that's what we do. We carry out civilian orders. And so one of the things that we really encourage people to do is to understand that regardless of whether or not you supported this war, does not give you a free pass to say, okay, I don't want to have, or I don't need to do anything for this population of service members, veterans, and families, because we're still Americans, even though we're military and veteran Americans. So anyway, I'm kind of going all over the place. But basically what happened was I saw the experiences of families firsthand, what war did to families, not just when the service member was deployed, but when they came home. Probably about 70%, I would say, the data indicates, comes out of the military and does just fine. But 30% or so, which works out to about 300 to 500,000 just veterans, not the family members, are struggling with some kind of crisis, be that physical or mental health.
But that's
we see,
out of every 3 still.
Yeah, huh?
That's 1 out of every 3 still. Right?
Yeah, it's a significant number, and the what they call the signature wounds of these wars is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and traumatic brain injury, TBI, from a lot of the explosions. The good news is a lot of these people are living through horrific injuries because of the advances that we've made, not just in equipment, but on the medical side of things, been able to save somewhere over 90% of the people who have been severely wounded. So, but people are coming home with injuries, both physical and mental, and that means families are affected. So anyway, I saw what was going on, as just a wife, and being that I went to Berkeley, tried to kind of change the system from the ground. I know that's shocking. So
That's how we
were we were at Fort Bragg. My husband did his battalion command there, and I did what I could to try to inform and change the system. But the military, and there's a lot of really great things about the military. I have to say that not coming up in it or knowing anything about it, I've been just really. It was a great experience for me being a military wife. Difficult, but great. But one of the things is, they're really big on tradition and protocol, and having a wife speak up about things that were probably a little bit uncomfortable did not go over that well. So when we left Fort Bragg and moved up to the DC area where I am now, I decided to write something for the Washington Post, an op-ed called Army Families Under Fire, and that's really what launched me into national advocacy. It was published in the Washington Post in May of 2009. And so that was a while ago, and I knew enough then to know enough. I didn't really know that much about the bigger space, and so I needed to understand how things worked or didn't work up at a national level, and put my head down for a couple of years to really get that understanding. And then back in 2011, joined with retired two-star General Salisbury, who was the CEO of our organization, Code of Support, and started this organization. So that's kind of the background to it. And I certainly never thought I would be in a situation where I was doing this kind of work, again, coming up in New Rochelle, New York, and going to Berkeley. But life is crazy, and it led me into a lifestyle I never would have known about, and I saw how incredibly when we talk about bravery, I think most of us think about the guys and the women on the battlefront, but these families are unbelievable. I mean, the majority of them have been able to just put their nose down and get through these multiple deployments over and over and over again, and most of them are able to pretty much do it, but I'll tell you that even the strongest of us, and I would put myself in this category, a couple years ago, I was starting to skate on that line too, where I felt like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And I don't know if I can keep doing it with a smile on my face, which is the expectation, I think, of military spouses in particular, that you better keep it together, because if you don't keep it together, then, your husband or your wife can't do the job, and then everything's going to fall apart. So there's a lot of pressure.
What strikes me, to frankly speaking, hit the nail on the head of what we've talked about over the past few months is the number of our troops that have taken their own lives. Which, why is it that that's not talked about as much as I think it should be? Or even the problem of mental health among troops. I mean, what are we missing? Because that's the void that Code of Support, fills, if you will. But it's an enormous void. You need to be bigger to do your job, But,
So the suicide rate among service members and veterans has gone up exponentially in the past 13 years. Not that shocking when you think about the pressure that's been on this community. Used to be, back before these wars started, that being in the military or being a veteran was actually a protective factor against suicide. You were less likely to commit suicide if you had military service history. Now that number has pretty much drawn up even, and maybe even has surpassed at this point, the civilian level. So there are so many different factors that go into people making that choice, and feeling like they have no choice. But yeah, I think in our community, we talk about it all the time. I think there's a problem with stigma and mental health in this country, right? It's not just a military problem. It's one of the last things that people are willing to talk about. You think about 20 years ago, no one would have talked about breast cancer. right?
Right.
So actually saying the words of mental health and depression and anxiety and PTS and all that kind of stuff, it's hard for people still. It's hard for people to admit themselves or out loud that that they're struggling. So I think that the stigma issue is something that we face in the military, but we face as a country. So Code of Support really looks to leverage all the different resources that are out there in the community. So one of the things that we see is that, I'm not sure if people are tracking this nationally, but the VA had quite the scandal this summer. And there was basically, a lot of heat put on them for not being able to provide services in a timely manner, and people dying because of it.
Yeah, I'll put a link to this at the end. I interviewed a gentleman in Montgomery, Alabama, just by almost accident, who was on a list. He's in a wheelchair, and make a long story short, he was had a difficult time getting service until he happened to meet President Clinton, and that was his entry into getting the assistance he needs. And now he has an appropriate truck, if you will, where he can wheel himself in and everything else, which that's all captured on video. But that just goes to what you were saying.
Well, and it's a government bureaucracy, right? So I think the important thing for people to understand, Americans to understand, is that even if everything in the VA was working perfectly, right? And it's not, and we need to work on it, and changes need to be made, and we partner with the VA. But even if everything is working perfectly, the VA just does not have the capacity to meet the entirety of this need. Less than 50% of veterans who are eligible for the VA are using it, first of all. And the majority of family members who have been negatively impacted by war, we're seeing, I shared with you that I personally know 3 Army wives that have killed themselves, and we're just not even talking about that. And we have children who have been negatively impacted by war with their mental health, not just from the deployments that they've dealt with, but from them living with a parent with PTS or traumatic brain injury, what that's like to live with someone with a mental health issue and how that affects your own life, whether you're a spouse or a kid or a mom for that matter. So the VA just doesn't really provide services for that population. So that means that the majority of services are going to be leveraged outside of a government agency. That's why Code of Support started our case coordination program. We basically serve any service member, veteran, or family, any generation, and make sure that they get the resources that they need. It could be mental health, it could be financial, it could be legal. We really try to approach it much more holistically. A lot of organizations that do this work do great work, but they're very narrowly scoped, right? And so they'll say, okay, we can do this, but we can't do this for you. And so what that's like for the veteran or the family member is like living in a voicemail purgatory where you're calling 50 different places, and that's hard enough to do if you're in the best of mental or physical health.
What does Code of Support bring in terms of the range of services? If someone's watching this and they are a veteran and they need help, how can you help them if they are suffering?
So if anybody's watching this who's a service member, veteran, or family, and like I said, any generation and any discharge status. A lot of times people have a discharge status other than honorable that's directly related to undiagnosed mental health issues and behavioral issues that resulted of that. And then those people, when they transition out of the military, because of their discharge status, have less access to services. So we'll help those folks too. So basically what they can do is they go to our website, www.codeofsupport.org, go to our Go Get Help page, fill out a little form, and then they'll get a case coordinator that will help connect them with the resources, help them identify what their needs are, prioritize them, come up with a plan. It's not just like, hey, we're going to give you a bunch of phone numbers to call. It's much more in-depth than that. So we just basically are there to advocate and connect our veterans and service members and families with the resources that they need. If you're a civilian American, we encourage you to come to the website just to start to get engaged. We have a really cool thing called the actual Code of Support. It's a set of 6 meaningful promises that all Americans can make. This is the 99% that we talked about to support our service members, veterans, and families. And it's actually a really cool, little page on our website. You can read the code, you can sign the code, and you can dedicate it to somebody. And then you can go and look at our 99 ways to get involved. So if you want to try to help or you want to learn more, we're giving you specific suggestions on how to do that. Other organizations that you can volunteer for, movies, books, and stuff that can help inform, what this has been like. Opportunities to engage with veterans and families themselves. We do events, that try to bring the civilian military community together. We did a really cool event in August at the World War II Memorial where we built this living wall of honor, which was over 1,000 flowers, and we had civilians and military come together and create a bridge home for this generation of veterans. So all that kind of stuff is, is on the website, and this kind of thing that we do. We also have a cool documentary called Profiles in Service Takes a Nation, and people can, are we putting that online yet? Yeah, it's on YouTube. So we can link it. So it's only 30 minutes long, and it's a way to start the conversation in your community. So we partnered with community groups to show the documentary, and then actually have a discussion in their communities on how to bridge the divide.
Wow, this is exciting, Kristy. Hey, I'm just curious. Cool. Has anyone tried to write a bill to get Congress and the country to really treat this as a higher priority?
There are a lot of bills. There's a lot of bills, yeah. And I'll tell you, I will say that the veteran community has a pretty strong lobby here in D.C. There's some organizations that have been around for a long time, like the American Legion and the VFW, and there's a newer one that has sprung up in the wake of 9/11, IAVA, which is Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. And they are on the Hill all the time advocating for better treatment for veterans. And there's a Clay Hunt Act, I think, that is on the floor now, right? They're trying to get it through. I would be shocked if that didn't get through. I mean, they're really looking to increase access and awareness around veteran mental health. One of the things that I'm very passionate and concerned about, again, is that mental health of the military family and member. And we've worked for several years to get some attention to that. And is it in the NDA now? So we finally got Congress to basically mandate the services to track suicides among military spouses. Yeah, so that it took us a while, but things move slow here.
I encourage everyone to donate to CODA support. How can one do that? Thank you, Sunny, first of all. And I know it's end of year giving for everybody, and there's a lot of terrific organizations out there, be they civilian or military. I think what makes us different is that we really are looking to improve the entire space. No one organization can do this alone unless we build partnerships and mechanisms for partnerships, which is what we're doing with our Warrior Veteran Family Support Network. Then we're just going to keep missing the boat on these things because these organizations are so stovepipe. So if people really want to help us both at the micro level by helping service members, veterans, families every single day, and at the macro level by making this space more effective, they can donate to us either going online and doing it that way, or they can send us a check to CODA Support, and it's 2050 Ballinger Avenue, Suite 400, Alexandria, Virginia, 22314. Address is on the website. We are a 501c3, and we have a tax EIN number, so it's all tax deductible. And I'm sitting here telling you, Berkeley girl that got into this space, your donation will absolutely make a difference. We're not a huge organization by any means, but we are making a direct impact and hope to make even more of an impact as we go forward. And tell them the website, by the way.
www.codeofsupport.org.
Hey, Kristy, thank you.
Thank you, Zenny. Really appreciate it.